And good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
we see the lefty lawyers, we see the Labour Party. All together, they're encouraging these illegal migrants to come over the channel by using this same old slogan, smash the gangs.
are migrant charities just human traffickers in disguise? It's time to put them under the microscope. Plus, what are they trying to hide? The government refuses to tell us the number of welfare claims, benefits, arrests, or crimes committed by migrants in Britain. And
I recognise that I earn more than average families in Britain, but I'm also determined in this position to protect the most vulnerable.
Rachel Reeves claimed £4,400 from you, the taxpayer, to heat her second home. Labour MPs expensed more than 400 grand in total. How on earth can they cut the winter fuel payments for the elderly? And
recognise today that our diversity is our greatest strength.
King Charles has gone full woke ahead of the Australia visit. Is this bad for the royal family? Plus,
also made these statements using inflammatory language that likens children and young people coming out as trans to the spread of a disease.
I've never said that. That is a lie.
Well,
that is a lie, and I think you should withdraw that statement.
Both Labour MPs, hoping to chair the Women and Equalities Committee, don't know what a woman is. Meanwhile,
well, yes, he should apologise. You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
Huge lefty activist Carol Vorderman is clearly regretting her political choices. On my panel tonight is Director of Popular Conservatives Mark Littlewood, landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and journalist Nina Mishkov. Oh, and is this true?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Get ready, Britain, here we go. Why are they hiding the truth about migrants on benefits? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. Rachel Reeves has defended claiming £4,400 in taxpayer-funded expenses for her heating on her second home after the government's plans to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners cleared the Commons. In today's exchanges at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. Meanwhile, this morning, our political editor, Chris Hope, asked the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, if the looming October budget will be more bad news for pensioners.
We've committed to those bus passes, to free TV licences for those entitled and free prescriptions. But we've also committed to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. That means that pensioners have £900 more this winter and likely another £460 from next April.
In other news, the Business Secretary has unveiled a multi-million-pound package to support Tata Steel's shift to greener production. Jonathan Reynolds blamed the previous government for failing to make critical decisions. However, the Conservatives are accusing Labour of extending a deal they once criticised. Jonathan Reynolds says the new agreement includes investment opportunities to secure long-term jobs, despite up to 2,800 positions being at risk. Now, a mother who went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in riots has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims. Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. He was in court for attacking a bus and vandalising a vape shop, crimes tied to unrest after a stabbing spree in Southport. The 30-year-old mother was ordered to pay £1,200 compensation, approximately the same price as her holiday, and attend a 6-month parenting course. And in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have met again at a 9/11 memorial event in New York after facing off in their first and possibly only presidential debate last night. The showdown began with a handshake but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his crowds. Trump hit back, though, defending his popularity and attacking Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Those are your latest headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's time to ask, what are our politicians trying to hide? The Department for Work and Pensions has stopped publishing data on welfare claims by nationality. HMRC has stopped publishing tax paid and tax credits received by nationality. The Home Office will not answer questions on the immigration status of prisoners, neither will the Ministry of Justice. They have the data, but they won't publish it. The Home Office doesn't collect nationality data on people who've been arrested. It won't reveal how much is being spent on migrant hotels. They won't tell us the cost of renovating flats for asylum seekers. Apparently, we don't have solid figures on how much taxpayers' money is being spent on refugee loans. This was all revealed by Tory MP Neil O'Brien. Well, no wonder the pension age is going up, eh? As well as your taxes. I mean, why aren't we allowed to know the truth about those things? What are they so afraid of? Is it the truth that the British public might react badly to discovering the sheer number of crimes committed by foreign nationals or the cost to the taxpayer? We have an idea, though, don't we? You know, there was no growth in our economy in July, and yet we continually get pumped with mass migration. I'm just going to pose this question. If migration makes us richer, why are we getting poorer? Our politicians can't just lie to us and hope we don't kick off. If the truth is so bad that we might protest if we knew about it, then maybe they should do something about the problem, instead of covering it up. Let's get our thoughts from our panel this evening. Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've also got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and journalist Nina Mishkov. Adam, I'll start with you. Why do you think they are making it so difficult to get these figures, or in some cases just actively refusing to give it?
As you said, they know we won't like what we hear. In numerous countries across Europe that now publish the data, there is a correlation between increased immigration and increased crime. We allowed 1.4 million visas to the UK in 2023 alone. I would like to know if they are contributing to this country financially or in other ways, and are they committing crimes? So the only way we are going to know that is if we get statistics. Germany in 2023, 18% of all sexual assaults were asylum seekers, by asylum seekers. There are 761 gang rapes in Germany in 2023. 47.5% of the suspects were foreign-born. Denmark, immigrants and descendants committed 29% of all violent crime, yet they make up just 14% of the population. There is obviously a serious problem culturally coming to Europe, and we need to know about it. And the only way we will do that is if we have the statistics.
Yeah, and again, you know, the statistics might just bear out that we haven't got anything like the same problem here. Maybe, but it would be nice to know, wouldn't it? And, Mark, when you... We see that now it is becoming increasingly difficult, and I suspect that it's because the British public couldn't handle the truth, maybe, about whether or not... Certainly when it comes to the amount that we're paying in benefits, for example.
Yeah, I think this is very worrying, Patrick. There are reasons for the government not to release information. I can think of two. One is genuine national security. We don't tend to press release our military operations before they happen. And the other is the protection of personal privacy. I've had NHS treatment, but that doesn't mean that Adam can see my medical records. So if there's a particular individual, we don't release people's voting records. That's a secret ballot. But we've now got into the position where we are effectively not releasing data or statistics because it's politically sensitive. You mentioned the decision by the Information Commission. They exist essentially to try and encourage information to enter the public domain, to inform public debate in large part. We're not allowed to know the cost of refurbishing 346 flats in Farnborough, Hampshire, because it's too sensitive. If you start suppressing information because it is too sensitive, meaningful public debate cannot occur.
And, Nina, I just wonder whether or not that means that people actually have a right to get angry, not break the law, but have a right to get angry and frustrated about this. If we can't know the answer to this, the implication is that the answers are probably quite bad.
Well, I think there are two crimes in this regard. One is I'm a firm believer in truth and transparency, and I, too, would love to live in a world where we were given the information that's there, because obviously they have the data. They're not idiotic. They're collecting data all the time on every single aspect of us, our lives, who comes, who goes, who doesn't, what nationality they come from, how long they've been here, their criminal records, all of that. There will be computers working. It's all of that. But the second negative aspect to this is the fact that it's felt that this must be kept from the public. And the only reason I can surmise, as you alluded to, was the fact that this might cause problems. And I think this is a very regrettable situation, because I would like to know what facts there are. But if we go back just a couple of months to see what happened when one misplaced, complete lie caused riots, and all the trouble that ensued. And it wasn't a government statistic. It wasn't something in the mainstream media. It was something on social media.
All the more reasons to reveal the truth.
Well, this is just one case. I agree. I would like to see the truth. But it is a dreadful situation when facts that might not correlate with what people want will set things off.
I get that. I do get that. But then my take on that will be we'll sort the problem out then, and then there wouldn't be...
Yeah, I mean, we're almost only a few steps away from the insanity that prevailed in former communist countries in Central and Eastern Europe, where the state decided it would be a good idea to lie on the weather forecast in order to try and keep people happier. Don't actually tell people what the weather forecast is. That might make them a bit miserable. Tell them what what the weather forecast like
That is a good point, because in those countries, people could go outside and see for themselves that the weather forecast they were being told on the television was not the reality. And it feels like that now in Britain, doesn't it?
It does. But what you seem to observe, which is obviously typically anecdotal, but if you combine a good number of anecdotes, you get a data set. What people seem to observe doesn't, in their mind, fit with the facts, and then the government says, we're not going to release the facts.
The other thing is you mentioned Neil O'Brien. I mean, 6 months ago he was tweeting that he couldn't get information. So it's not just the new Labour government.
No, it's the state.
It's absolutely not. It's absolutely not.
It's politicians.
And also, you can get certain facts. For instance, the greatest proportion of benefit claimants for credit are 77.5% are white. And 5% are Asian. So that's...
And 82% or 83% of this country is white. So there is a disproportion across statistics in this country.
The highest, also, according to the ONS, and I know this because I happened to look it up earlier on before I came on air because I thought it was quite intriguing, like what we were saying. So the highest proportion of people aged between 16 and 64 who are unemployed, and this is done by religion now, identify as Muslim. Higher proportion than any other religious demographic in this country.
Look, Patrick, there's going to be some very inconvenient facts come out if they ever release this data. You know, the German stats, 75% of German asylum seekers are men under 35. Yet when someone like me points out that most of the asylum seekers coming across the channel are men, I have people like Nina and people on Twitter tell me that I'm lying, and they're not.
Not saying they're lying.
We have eyes.
No, I understand that. I'm not saying that, and we discussed this last week. Of course there are women and children. Sadly, a pregnant woman and 6 children. Now, the thing is, if you are in a war-torn country and your route to safety is through many other countries, that's a very difficult...
I don't leave my family in a war zone.
Excuse me.
I stay here and I protect my family.
Well, that's you.
No.
You're not in a war-torn... You're not in a war...
Don't the two of you think that the debate between you would be more enlightened if we actually had the data to base it on?
Exactly.
Can you imagine a world? Can you imagine a world in which we said, for example, we're not going to release gender statistics on domestic violence. We don't want to be sexist. Some people think more domestic violence is carried out by men, but we're not going to release those statistics. This would be extraordinary. And it is almost... It's becoming increasingly difficult to have these debates because there isn't the data to base it on. That's not Adam's fault.
My point being... Never mind what you would do, and you're better than everybody in your own eyes, so let's just keep it like that.
Well, because a man that would protect his family and would not leave them in a war zone, and any man with any morals would do the same. And all these men that are coming across...
You're repeating yourself. We've got all of that, yada, yada, yada. Now, what I was going to say was that if you have a situation... And it's been, I said this before, after the Second World War, the Italians, the Greeks went to Australia. It wasn't the women and children who went. You have to go through a difficult situation to find a place of safety, and then you bring them across. The same thing, you are not going to subject your children to walking across mountain passes, going from one country to another through Africa.
This is relevant to whether we release data.
No. I was saying we're talking about the fact that you're saying that he's all migrants, or all illegal migrants, he's saying, are male.
No, I'm saying the numbers.
I think it's what it's...
I'm saying the reason they're all male.
There's layers to it. So it's what financial cost is it to us? You know, we keep seeing, you know, we need mass migration, and then, you know, there's no growth and stagnant growth and it's going down GDP, but we're told that mass migration is a great thing for our economy and it makes us all wealthier, despite the fact that we can see that we're getting poorer. So that's a bit Orwellian, I think, isn't it? And then it's this idea now that we're not allowed to know what the crime rates are, what are arrests by nationality, what's the benefits and welfare state like by nationality. You know, in a society, I think, where we go out and vote all the time and it's a supposed democracy, why can't we know that?
The number of migrants to this country who have contributed so much far
But we don't know that, do we?
outweigh. No, we're talking about migrants, the Jewish migrants in the 30s.
I don't disbelieve you, Nina, but it'd be really
But that is your opinion, and my opinion is different.
No, I'm talking about Jewish migrants in the 30s.
Hang on, Nina, if this was true...
What about the Eastern European migrants?
I'm just doing the basic maths here. If that is true, then how do you rebut Patrick's point? Why is GDP per capita falling? GDP per capita, the average income of the average person is going down. If these people are coming in and contributing far more than the average, why are those statistics apparently so inaccurate?
We're not saying that the amount of immigrants coming here are not contributing. They are contributing. You're implying that illegal immigrants don't contribute. You don't know what they can turn out to be, and you're worried.
The state won't tell me.
No. But the thing is,
you're saying I don't know. Neither do you.
No, but the thing is, you're implying that they're all kind of mad rapists.
I want to see it on an Excel spreadsheet.
No, but you're also
mad rapists. That's what we're saying.
I've just given you some alarming statistics from other countries that many of them are.
The point being, many of them can, in a few years' time, turn out to be a cancer doctor who could save your daughter from breast cancer.
Absolutely.
You don't know that.
OK, all right. But we all agree, a nice point of agreement, it would be nice to have the numbers.
Exactly.
That's what we all was a shared point.
I agree.
Good stuff. All right. Now, in a screeching gear change, as ever, it is time for the Great British Giveaway now, and the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away. Here's some numbers you'll like. £36,000 could be yours. That's like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each and every month for an entire year. Here's all the details on what you'll need to do to make it yours.
On demand. Good luck.
OK, still to come. Jubilant scenes outside British prisons yesterday. Thousands of criminals were freed, weren't they?
Keir Starmer, I am. I'm a big Labour...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Big Labour supporter?
I'm with the old in with the new. It's been too long anyway, I think.
But predictably, the story has now moved on because it's been revealed today that a killer convicted of manslaughter, sex offenders and domestic abusers were all let loose onto Britain's streets. Oh, and the taxpayer could be footing the bill for hotel rooms for some of them. So are ordinary Brits now in danger? Have violent criminals been given a free pass? I'm joined by a former prison officer on that very, very soon. But up next, so the term walkabout will not be used during the King and Queen's upcoming tour of Australia, out of a fear that it might offend Indigenous communities. So is the royal family at risk of going woke? Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams goes head-to-head with political commentator Anna McGovern. That's live in just a few minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I've got a question for you here, Mr. Motivator. Each time I will try and do a couch to 5K, and I start, and then it stops, and then I'll have another go. It's baby steps, though, for most of us, isn't it? You've got to start slow, because I also see people go out and run, do that, and then do too much, and they get completely exhausted and think, I can't do this anymore. So what is it? You have to start slowly, right? Is that fair?
Well, with everything that you do need to start slowly. But what's more important than that? You need to identify an activity that suits you. Now, the thing is, you may want to do couch to 5K, but let's say you have a preponderance for swimming. Maybe swimming is what you really like, or dancing is what you like. You find the activity that suits you. And I have to say, you'll never see a happy jogger. They're happy afterwards. They've enjoyed the experience, but they're never happy whilst doing it. But you must start with everything.
Have you ever been out of shape, though? Because whilst I find you really inspiring, I feel as though you've always been in good nick, and therefore it's kind of come easy to you. Whereas I think, you know, there are plenty of people who have a tendency to put on weight. I mean, I can look at chocolate and I feel like I put on weight. You know, and it's a slog, especially if you've taken your foot off the gas for a while. Getting back into it's brutal. What do you know about that?
Well, let me just say this to you, that in the early days, and I can go back, don't forget 71 years, our activity level was much higher. But this is something that's really just happened in the last 30 years. So in those 30 years, we have changed. We now spend more time in front of the computer. We spend more time sitting down. So that's why we need gyms, and we need to get up. Now, gyms don't suit everybody. And that's why I do free classes. Free club, you can join. Everyone can get access to movement in their home. But you have got to make that first step.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight, and it is, of course, time now for our head-to-head. And the King and Queen will jet off to Australia and Samoa in their first long-haul tour since the King was diagnosed with cancer. But the 9-day trip down under has raised eyebrows after Buckingham Palace announced that the phrase walkabout won't be used out of respect for Australia's Indigenous communities. It will mark the first royal tour ever where it has been deliberately dropped. So in Aboriginal culture, the term walkabout refers to when a person travels on foot into the bush in times of ritual, meditation, change, grief or coming of age. It comes after a video released on Monday to mark the Princess of Wales' recovery from cancer was praised as well for being modern and relatable.
As the summer comes to an end, I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment. Doing what I can to stay cancer-free is now my focus.
Well, earlier this year, the King used his Commonwealth Day message to celebrate this country's diversity as well.
Together and individually, we are strengthened by sharing perspectives. We recognise today that our diversity is our greatest strength.
And back in 2022, the King and Queen reportedly invited Ngozi Fulani, remember her, to Buckingham Palace for talks after the charity boss was repeatedly asked where she was, quote, really from by a lady-in-waiting, allegedly. So tonight I'm asking, is the royal family in danger of going full woke? Going head-to-head on this now, the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams and the political commentator Anna McGovern. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Anna, I will start with you. Do you think the royal family is in danger now of going a bit woke here, especially when it comes to this walkabout stuff?
I absolutely think they are in danger of going woke. And I think this is a trend that we're seeing where we're rejecting tradition and something that has been part of our culture for decades now. This is something that has been a big part of the tradition, a big part of our history. And I just think it definitely represents the trend that we're seeing and the direction we're going, where we're prioritising political correctness and not wanting to upset people. And I just think it's absolutely woke. Ridiculousness.
Richard, I'll bring you in here now. I mean, do people of Aboriginal heritage actually give a toss whether or not the King uses the word walkabout?
Yeah.
Well, firstly, I mean, Anna was talking about sensitivity and traditions and the way they're handling this trip. Very important, by the way, and I'm sure we'd all agree it's an excellent thing that Australia remains a monarchy, and that's the way we want to keep it. In 1999, there was that splendid referendum result. But so far as walkabout's concerned, yes, in 1970, Queen Elizabeth coined the phrase going on a walkabout with Prince Philip, but things have moved on since then, and it's very, very important, especially remembering that the monarchy, the British monarchy, isn't automatically the head of the Commonwealth, but the King Charles is, and it's absolutely essential, in my view, that the sensitivities in different countries are observed. If you look, for example, the last time William and Catherine, sadly, went abroad, this was in March 2021, 1992 to the Caribbean, and it wasn't successful because issues, although I think it was wrongly covered, certain issues were hypersensitive, particularly the demands for reparations and links with slavery. So you need to move with the times.
I get that. I get that. But Anna, my point would possibly be giving into this stuff actually doesn't do you any good. The moment you show a bit of weakness, people pounce on it anyway. You know, we had the whole Ngozi Fulani, that ridiculous situation there where, you know, there was all this massive apology and we've got to, you know, really bow down before Ngozi Fulani. You've got the king there sitting there saying, you know, diversity is our greatest strength. I mean, where's that going to get them? Nowhere.
I completely agree with that. And when we're seeing in society as well, you've got institutions such as universities releasing these language guides where you've got these people telling us what is and what isn't offensive. And I think yes, I would agree, it's probably the royal family's attempt to try and move with the times. But I think there's probably other ways that they can make an impactful difference rather than this being the stance that they take, the term walkabout. I just think it's quite ridiculous and not necessary.
Richard, you know, the king will probably fly there, I would imagine, with the Queen. You can guarantee they'll have to make a point about offsetting their carbon just to keep that lot happy. They won't use the walkabout term because they'll have to keep the Aboriginal community happy over there. Obviously, they'll be fine that the Queen's face has now been taken off banknotes over there, replaced, I believe, by a member of the Aboriginal community, naturally. You know, you've got all of these tick boxes that the King and the royal family have to do, instead of just maybe, I don't know, leading, being there, being present. Why do they keep bowing down to this stuff?
Well, firstly, as I say, I mean, if you look at the Commonwealth, there are 56 countries. Now, I think that's an enormously important institution, and we benefit in all sorts of ways, as do the other countries who are members of it. Now, if you don't take account, with times changing, by the way, of course, as they did during Queen Elizabeth's reign, if you don't take account of various sensitivities, especially certain pressure groups, I'm not suggesting that we write off our history as being something that's dreadful. There are ups and downs and pluses and minuses, we all know that. But the point is to be sensitive to other cultures, and that is absolutely pivotal.
Yeah, well, he spends half his life apologising for stuff that he had nothing to do with now. You know, he's apologised for their history, I think, for some of the Caribbean countries there. Anna, you've lived in Australia, I believe. You spent quite a bit of time over there. They have gone very woke when it comes to the Aboriginal stuff. Elements of it I can get behind, clearly. I don't think people were always treated particularly well over there. But some of the things they've done are a little bit out there, aren't they? I mean, what's it like over there when it comes to relations with the Aboriginal communities?
I would say, to be fair, that is something that is a big point of contention in Australia. But then not just that as well. What we're seeing in the UK, a lot of these same issues do crop up in Australia, especially with freedom of speech and saying the wrong thing, getting cancelled. I've met with so many people who have personally, like, they've been deplatformed, lost their jobs just for having an opinion, just for potentially saying the wrong thing, and then losing their livelihood as a result. So with Australia, I think particularly this is the trend that we saw from 2020 with the lockdowns, especially in Melbourne, some of the harshest lockdown restrictions in the world. Now, Australia is known as being a country of freedom and liberty. So then I think for many Australians, it was a huge turning point, a big wake-up call when these lockdown measures were implemented, some of the harshest in the world. And then I think now we're seeing a lot more people actually standing up against it and fighting back.
Yeah, Richard, a final word to you on this. A big concern that I think people should have when it comes to the royal family caving into stuff is if you take all of that to its natural conclusion, then it could be argued, and indeed is argued by people, that every single aspect of the royal family is wrong, has got some historical wrong to it, should be cancelled and should be atoned for. And if you follow it to its natural conclusion, it leads to the destruction of the monarchy.
No, absolutely not, because the monarchy, you have a king as head of state, as a symbol of national unity. To be brief, I mean, it isn't the power the monarchy has, it's the power the monarchy derives to others, and those who respect traditions, and we have so many splendid traditions, as well as those who come from elsewhere who also respect the freedoms that, and I agree with that, they're very important indeed in Britain. I think that the monarchy has so much to commend it especially since it's the world's most high-profile institution of its type. And the soft power that gives us is so essential, but so is the link with the Commonwealth, which isn't, as I say, automatic. You couldn't have a bureaucrat. They rotate, and you certainly couldn't have a rotating head of state. You could get a dictatorship.
OK. I also just possibly should have made this point earlier. Presumably, when the Aboriginal community in Australia were indeed really, doing all the walkabout stuff, that's not what they called it. Because I don't think that they would have been walking around speaking the Queen's or the King's English, would they? But, alas, here we go. It's a phrase that we use commonly in this country that we now can't use in case we offend people who are thousands of miles away. But anyway, thank you very much, both of you. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams there and the political commentator Anna McGovern. Coming up, just 24 hours after she stripped millions of pensioners of their winter fuel payment, Rachel Fries has been caught claiming expenses to heat her own home.
I recognise that I earn more than average families in Britain, but I'm also determined in this position to protect the most vulnerable.
And in yet more bad news for Britain's elderly, the Prime Minister refused to rule out scrapping their free bus passes. So has Labour just declared all-out war on pensioners? Former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon doesn't think so. He joins me very soon. But next, a killer convicted of manslaughter, a violent thug who paralysed a toddler, sex offenders and domestic abusers. That's just a flavour of some of the 1,700 criminals freed yesterday by the government. Oh, and it's emerged today that you could be footing the bill for their hotel accommodation. So, has the government just given dangerous criminals a free pass? I'm joined by former prisons officer who says that some convicts are turning down the early release scheme. He'll explain why in just a few seconds.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively and not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry and large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even again likely to see more of a frost on Friday morning. Much of the country, though, will be dry and fine on Friday. We will see rain coming into the northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. That's a sign of a change. Things turning wetter across the north into the weekend, staying dry in the south, and slowly warming up.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. So, 1,700 criminals, as we all know by now, were set free yesterday in an attempt to tackle the overcrowding crisis in British jails. But the story has moved on a bit, predictably, because it's emerged today that a killer convicted of manslaughter, a violent thug who paralysed a baby, sex offenders and domestic abusers were among those released. So let's be honest with you, it's frankly as bad as anyone could have thought it would be. The Justice Secretary has also been forced to admit that some of the recently freed convicts could be put up in taxpayer-funded hotels once community accommodation runs out. So speaking to GB News, political editor Christopher Hope, Rachel Reeves laid the blame on the previous government.
It makes me really angry. It makes me really angry, the inheritance that the previous government left, whether it's the £22 billion black hole in the public finances or failing to build the prison places that are necessary to keep criminals locked up.
Well, I'm joined now by the former prisons officer, Val Vavrosh. Val, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. I mean, we were a terrorist away from the full set of the wrong uns that were released yesterday, weren't we?
Yes, not far off, yeah.
I mean, what should we do about this now? I mean, these people are out and about, aren't they? One of the person got released and got immediately rearrested at the gates and then sent back in again. So, you know, the calibre of individual that we've now allowed out, were they right to do this? We're paying for them to be in hotels, for example. Is that right?
No, I mean, it's a bit of a panic thing. The Labour government have inherited it. You know, it's not all their fault. But this release scheme, it'll only work. It's only a short-term fix. It's like a sticking plaster. These people, because they're being released early, aren't prepared for release. So they've been put out on the streets with maybe housing not in place, no jobs, nothing. So it's going to be really difficult for them to stay out of prison. You know, I think it is a mistake, really. But what else were they? The prisons were bursting at the seams. They were wanting to put more people in prison. And it's the only option, really.
Yeah, I mean, we had the kind of brutal double whammy of this government simultaneously wanting to lock a load of people up for as long as physically possible for, at times, some relatively dubious things, not entirely, of course. I believe that some of the people that you work with in prisons have turned down the offer of early release. Is that right? Or why is that?
They have, because we put people in, current serving prisoners, into jobs whilst they're finishing off the sentence on a scheme called ROTL, Release on Temporary Licence. So they get up in the morning, they jump in the cars, they go to work and they hold the job down. Now, if they get released on this early release scheme, they get tagged. And the tagging, it's a blanket tag by the probation service. So what happens is they will be told you have to be in your home from, let's say, 7 p.m. on an evening till 7 a.m. on a morning. It means that these guys who are on nights or late shifts can't hold the job down, so they're actually going to lose the job. So we've had 3 people who've been offered the release scheme who've got a job whilst on ROTL through our companies, and I've said I don't want it. I'm staying in here. I want my job. It's important to me. And like I say, it must be a first. Prisoners, refusing to be released.
No, indeed. Look, Val, thank you very much for your time this evening. It's Val Vavrosh, though, he's a former prisons officer. Some insightful stuff there about the idea that actually some of the people who are being offered early release have turned it down because they haven't really got anything to go out to. It's kind of been rushed upon them as well. But when you look at the catalogue of people that we just rattled off there, I mean, an individual who paralysed a toddler. I know there'll be many people watching this show right now who think that people who do that kind of thing should never see the light of day again anyway. I know there are a lot of people out there now who will be thinking that no punishment could possibly be severe enough for those kind of depraved monsters. And yet those are some of the people who've been allowed to walk out earlier than anyone ever expected as a result of a decision that this Labour government made. Now, people can say, well, fine, and there is some truth to this, that the Tories let the prison system get right to the very brink. How quick were we, though, to build those Nightingale hospitals during the COVID crisis? We could pop them up, couldn't we? As it turned out, hardly anyone flipping used them. But we could pop those up very quickly, couldn't we? Could we have not done something similar with prison facilities? I don't know. Coming up, no-nonsense Reform UK MP Lee Anderson has called out the migrant charities. Finally.
We see the lefty lawyers, we see the Labour Party, all together. They're encouraging these illegal migrants to come over the channel by using this same old slogan, smash the gangs.
Look, is it not time now that the government cracked down on some of these migrant charities that encourage people to get to Calais and then cross the channel? Is there not a very fine line between humanitarian work and human trafficking? I'm going to give you my take at 10 p.m. But first, Rachel Reeves has been caught claiming expenses to heat her home, her second home, by the way, just hours after she scrapped winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners.
I recognise that I earn more than average families in Britain, but I'm also determined in this position to protect the most vulnerable.
To make matters worse, Keir Starmer's now refused to rule out scrapping the free bus passes for the elderly. I mean, come on. So has the government declared all-out war on pensioners? Former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon joins me next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Would you have Harry back with open arms? And this is Ian. Hi, Ian. Harry is unfortunately not well. He's an emotional wreck. Ian, you actually took the words out of my mouth. I remember when I was younger, queuing up for hours for West Ham tickets. I'm that sad. But at least I got the ticket. It was my ticket. They knew it was me, and there were no touts involved. It's Forever says Harry can stay away. He was so quick to condemn this country as racist and to trash the Queen and royal family's reputations. He should be banished and his titles removed. He has not earned the right to call himself anything with a royal title. Ooh, passionate. Since moving to the US with Meghan, the American dream has had a number of issues for him, I think it's fair to say. But if Harry was to return, would he be welcome? And could he make it up with William? Look, if Oasis, sorry I said the O word, have done it, can William and Harry?
Well, I think it's going to present a lot of challenges. I mean, I've got to be clear here. When it comes to reconciliation, if it's possible, obviously, to mend the rift with William, clearly that is to be welcomed. But as for Harry returning, what precisely would that mean? What precisely would Harry want? Because if it is in any sense a return to royal duties, you really got to be very, very careful with what you're dealing with. As far as the royal family are concerned, for goodness sake, reconciliation, yes, but actual work as a senior working royal is not, in my opinion.
So I always think it's quite funny listening to serious people talk seriously about the royals, because it's not that serious, a lot of it. But actually, I think where I'm fascinated by them is that we can sort of see a bit of ourselves as a society and as individuals.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, is it time now for the government to crack down on these migrant charities? But first, less than 24 hours after the Labour government voted to strip the winter fuel allowance from 10 million pensioners, it's today emerged that Labour MPs have claimed an astonishing £400,000 in taxpayers' cash to heat their own homes. Many of them, by the way, their second homes. With the Chancellor Rachel Reeves herself claiming £4,400 in energy support expenses. Well, GBNews political editor Christopher Hope did take Reeves to task on this earlier today.
Your heating bills are being picked up by the taxpayer in your second home. How is that fair to pensioners really worried this winter about it being too cold?
Well, being a constituency MP means that you have to have a house in London, as well as, of course, living in the constituency.
Yeah, and you can pay your own heating bill, can't you? And as if stripping pensioners of their winter fuel payments wasn't enough, the Prime Minister also today refused to rule out stripping the elderly of their free bus passes.
Following Labour's disgraceful political decision to scrap winter fuel payments with little notice to millions of pensioners, will the Prime Minister today rule out scrapping concessionary travel fares and council tax discounts, which also help millions of pensioners across the UK? Yes or no?
Prime Minister. As he knows very well, I'm not going to preempt the budget. It will all be set out in due course.
Right, OK, I mean, we can take that one in two ways, can't you? I'm joined now by former Labour Minister Geoff Hoon. Geoff, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Why does Labour hate old people?
They don't at all, and indeed the triple lock remains in place and it will provide a substantial increase in this year's pension.
Will it actually, though, Geoff? Is that a fact? Because it's quite heavily disputed as to whether or not that really is the case, isn't it? And for those people who are living on the breadline now, having to choose between heating and eating, but Rachel Reeves can just get the taxpayer to pay for the energy bill in her second home, can't she?
Well, the triple lock was set out very clearly in Labour's manifesto for the general election. It remains in place. I've only seen newspaper reports about the increase that is likely as a result of the operation of the triple lock, but it looks substantial, and I've no reason to doubt that those newspaper reports are true.
Well, if that was OK, then why did Keir Starmer stand up in the House of Commons and berate Rishi Sunak for even thinking about this? Because the triple lock was in place then, so it wouldn't have been a bad thing, would it?
It was, and as I understand it, the Conservative Party indicated in its manifesto that it would maintain this triple lock. So
no, not the triple lock, getting rid of the winter fuel payment. Why was it a bad thing when the Conservatives were thinking of doing it, but it's a good thing now? Because we had the triple lock then. So if the argument is the triple lock will make everything fine, then was Keir Starmer lying then, or is he lying now?
He's not lying at all. What he's doing is recognising the difficulty that the economy is in. There's a substantial gap in the amount of money available compared to the amount that has to be spent. And somewhere, someone has to fill that gap.
Why don't they just borrow more money like they borrowed £3.1 billion for the unions?
Well, it's not an enviable choice to try and take these decisions, and they are very difficult decisions that all chancellors have had to deal with over time. I've watched chancellors myself in Parliament struggle with some of these very difficult decisions. They are tough decisions, but the country needs tough decisions at these difficult times.
£400,000 the Labour Party MPs have claimed for heating and energy bills, a lot of that in their second homes. Geoff, should they give that money back?
Patrick, let's just imagine that GB News decide that you've got to go to Labour's conference in Liverpool in a few weeks' time, and you've got to stay overnight. I guess, being a good employer, GB News will provide you with a hotel room.
You've picked the wrong person to go out there, Geoff, because quite often I have decided to pay for my own hotel, I've decided to pay for my own transport there. I don't really believe, if I am paid a decent amount of money, which I'm very fortunate enough to be in a position where I am, I don't believe that I should actually have to take money off of the people that could be spent sending somebody else there who maybe is on a slightly lower wage, OK? So actually, I don't do that. But that doesn't matter. That logic doesn't apply for Labour MPs, doesn't it? The amount of money that MPs are on, and they get donations from some lords as well. One of them miraculously seemed to get a security passer down his street. Remarkable, that level of alleged cronyism, wasn't it? But they get all those donations as well. Why is the taxpayer having to pay for their heating bill when old Marjorie at number 82 is going to have hers cut off?
Well, the answer is, Patrick, that you are clearly a very principled person in not taking expenses when you your employer requires you to live away from home. Millions of people from time to time, some for longer periods, some for shorter periods, have to go away from home because their employer requires them to do so. The job requires them to do so. And that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about members of parliament who are required either to live in London because they happen to do that and therefore maintain a constituency
Why can't they
home.
just pay for some of that themselves, Jeff? Seriously, it's one thing getting the taxpayer to pay their rent or to pay that towards the second home. Why are we paying for them to turn the radiator on as well? I mean, it's a gravy train, isn't it? It's a gravy train that old people and pensioners do not have the luxury of being on.
The answer is that that amount of money is set by an independent organisation.
Classic.
I'm confident that the amount that Rachel Reeves has claimed will be precisely what her heating, electricity and so on has cost. She works away from home and she gets an allowance to do that. Millions of people are in that position. And whenever I've had the argument about MPs' expenses, I've said to them, well, do you happen to work away from home? And does your employer pay for your hotel or your accommodation?
Again, I'll
And the
just
answer
say, Jeff, that
yes.
falls down again, doesn't it? Because the employer is not the taxpayer, is it?
The employer may well be the taxpayer. Civil servants
not in
work away.
private business.
Lots of private business as well pays for people's expenses. You are a principled exception in not making that claim. Most people will do that. And it's perfectly reasonable for members of parliament who have to live and work in two different places that they should make these claims.
The optics of it are awful, though, Jeff, aren't they?
I accept that it isn't well understood why members of parliament might have two homes. Some are fortunate to be able to live in London, most do not. And in those circumstances, they've got to find money somehow. Now, the reason for this is very important, because otherwise, if you don't pay these allowances, only
Jeff,
wealthy people...
You can pay,
stand for
the
parliament.
taxpayer can pay for their second home. That doesn't mean they have to pay for their lecky and heating as well. OK? It doesn't. And there is a difference. Look, Jeff, I'm sorry, we're obviously not going to agree on this, but you do put up a good case. So Jeff Hoon there, former Labour minister. Right, look, coming up, you just couldn't make it up, OK? So apparently both Labour MPs hoping to chair the Women and Equalities Committee think that trans women are women. So the argument there would be they're not actually sure what a woman is. So can Labour be trusted to protect women's rights? But next, I've got a message for some of the refugee charities. Stop luring migrants to Calais and then encouraging them to cross the Channel. There is a Rizzler paper, isn't there, between humanitarian work and human trafficking. There are some serious questions that need to be answered here. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures are going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively and not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry and large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even again likely to see more of a frost on Friday morning. Much of the country, though, will be dry and fine on Friday. We will see rain coming into the northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. That's a sign of a change. Things turning wetter across the north into the weekend, staying dry in the south and slowly warming up.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
we see the lefty lawyers, we see the Labour Party. All together, they're encouraging these illegal migrants to come over the channel by using this same old slogan, smash the gangs.
are migrant charities just human traffickers in disguise? It's time to put them under the microscope. Plus,
also made these statements using inflammatory language that likens children and young people coming out as trans to the spread of a disease.
I've never said that. That is a lie. Well, that is a lie, and I think you should withdraw that statement.
Well, both Labour MPs hoping to chair the Women and Equalities Committee don't know what a woman is. Meanwhile,
this is not just M&S Food. This is Collection by M&S Food.
Well, apparently Marks & Spencer's new fashion designer could be a bottom-bearing latex tailor or a trans activist. That'll go down well with our customer base. Plus,
Hi, I'm Mel B, aka Scary Spice, and this is my hair story.
Spice Girl Mel B wants Afro hair to be added to the Equalities Act. How does Ginger Spice feel about all of that? Also tonight...
Well, I think he should apologise. You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
Raging lefty activist Carol Vorderman is clearly regretting her political choices. On our panel tonight is the director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got landlord and activist Adam Brooks and journalist Nina Mishkov. Oh, and is this true?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Are migrant charities just human traffickers in disguise? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 10 o'clock. Rachel Reeves has defended claiming taxpayer-funded expenses for heating her second home after the government's plan to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners cleared the Commons. In today's exchanges at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. Meanwhile, this morning, our political editor, Chris Hope, asked the Chancellor if the looming October budget will be more bad news for pensioners.
We've committed to those bus passes, to the free TV licences for those entitled and free prescriptions. But we've also committed to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. That means that pensioners have £900 more this winter and likely another £460 from next April.
In other news, the Foreign Secretary has announced over £600 million worth of support for Ukraine. David Lammy and Antony Blinken have been in Kyiv today on a joint trip, calling it a critical moment in the war with Russia. Their visit follows reports that Joe Biden will lift a ban on British Storm Shadow missiles being used on Russian territory after Iran supplied ballistic missiles to Russia. Now, in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have met again at a 9/11 memorial event in New York after facing off in their first and possibly only presidential debate last night. The showdown began with a handshake but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his crowds. Trump hit back, defending his popularity and attacking Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies.
She's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Meanwhile, Harris blamed Trump for nationwide abortion restrictions and the Capitol riot while questioning his fitness for office.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
And the King found himself in the middle of a scrum when he accepted a hug from a New Zealand women's rugby player. King Charles laughed as he was affectionately mobbed by the Black Ferns, who are in the UK to take on England's Red Roses, after he said a hug, why not? Those are the latest headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's time to put the migrant charities under the microscope. Are they human traffickers in disguise? Now, they vehemently deny this. But what is their role in the tidal wave of illegal immigration into Britain? Lee Anderson spoke in Westminster yesterday.
There's a charity there called Care for Calais, and these would attract these people. They give them the coordinates in whichever country they came from. They would take weeks and weeks or months to get there. Once they got to the camp, the Care for Calais would set up a school, teach them how to learn English, how to speak English, how to write in English. They give them new phones, new data, shelter, whatever, and get them ready for the crossing to the UK.
So the allegation there is that they signpost where they are to illegal migrants travelling across Europe, enticing them to Calais. They then help these illegal immigrants to get smartphones. And actually on the Care for Calais website, it does ask people to donate money for phones. And could those phones be used to link up with human traffickers? I think that's an important question. Volunteers at the Calais migrant camp have also been accused of striking up sexual relationships with some of the migrants. Now, bear in mind that the founder of Care for Calais stepped down after it was revealed that she had reportedly had a toy boy lover who posed as a Syrian refugee but was actually Tunisian. Anyway, migrant charities know that every person in those migrant camps, be it Calais or Dunkirk or wherever else, is trying to get into a small boat and cross the channel, or jump in the back of a lorry and enter Britain illegally. Now, they give those people food and clothing. Are they enabling them in their illegal journey? It appears that they help them find legal advice. They actually have a legal access team, numbers for law firms to give them the best chance to stay in Britain. Does that not further encourage people to cross the channel? And what happens when people cross the channel? Well, sometimes they die. Earlier this month, 12 people, including children and a pregnant woman, sadly died after their boat sank. Do migrant charities make any attempt to discourage people from making that crossing? If they are helping provide them with the technology, the legal advice and the sustenance that they would need to make that illegal crossing, then what responsibility do they bear for the deaths in the channel? Now, we've been to Care for Calais for comment on this. We haven't heard back. We never really hear back from them, to be fair. Now, I imagine that they would vehemently deny any wrongdoing on their part. But I think there is a question to be posed here. What is the difference between people who provide small boats for illegal immigrants to cross the Channel and the people allegedly helping them get prepared for that journey and then helping them stay in the country that they've just illegally entered? I think there is a fine line between humanitarian work and the human trafficking gangs. But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. We've got the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've also got landlord and activist Adam Brooks. And we've got journalist Nina Mishkov. Mark, I'll start with you on this. There is a fine line, isn't there, between the human traffickers and the people who are supposedly doing humanitarian work?
There is a fine line, and therefore I think it's pretty disappointing that Care for Calais haven't got back to GB News, because I think if you're dancing on a fine line, then you owe it to the media and the public to explain exactly which side of that line you're on. I think there are two questions here that need to be slightly unravelled there, Patrick. The first is, are any of these groups or individuals involved in doing anything illegal or criminal, in which case they should be arrested and prosecuted, if indeed they are. The second is, should they be charities? Now, the basic concept behind charity law is that you get charitable status if you're doing something that otherwise would have to be done by the state. So if you run a soup kitchen, for example, the argument might be otherwise the state would have to provide this sort of food for people. And I question whether any of these groups should be charities at all. Are they doing things that would otherwise be done by the British government? I certainly hope not, unless the government's policy on immigration is even crazier than I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, this is why we would have wanted to get comment for Care for Calais, because, you know, as it currently stands, yeah, all right, they're not really doing anything illegal. You know, it's not... The question for me is really whether or not, when you break it down, there is a bit of a grey area, Nina, between the people who are manufacturing the boats, transporting the boats, helping people get on the boats, and then maybe driving them out into the Channel or whatever they do, and the people who facilitate everything else around that. Are they the kind of final arm in the human trafficking chain, do you think, or not?
I don't think so. There is a distinct line. They are not helping them to get into boats. They are not providing the boats. They are not providing the substandard boats. They, in my eyes, they are humanitarian. They're helping them not just with food. What is wrong with teaching a migrant to speak a language that's going to help them? I mean, there's nothing. You talk about the state providing, Mark, and I quite understand that, but the state of France is not going to provide that for them. So that's not the situation. And the British government's not going to provide for them sitting in Calais. So there are these people who are in need of help, in need of assistance, in need of food, in need of shelter.
Do they need sexual assistance, like many of the Care for Calais women workers have given them? That's pushing it a bit far.
We'll slightly push back on that. I think there were some isolated examples, but your point being that shouldn't have happened at all.
It happened.
The thing is, it does happen. There was a big scandal with the Red Cross a few years ago. Do you not remember? There
seems to be a big problem with these charities, these humanitarian charities sleeping with
any situation where men and women are together in a situation, you are going to find that happens, and you cannot deny that.
Well, look, again, with this, obviously, we weren't there, so we don't know the extent of the trend. I think many people would think the idea that it happened at all is
disgusting. But at the end of the day, Patrick, Care for Calais are basically giving an idiot's guide to how to break into this country illegally. It's, you know, I wonder, if Care for Calais wasn't in France, how many would actually travel there to make this crossing? Would they know what to do?
I think I would argue with that. I mean, how... Of course they are, because their main thrust is to get across that channel. Look,
and Care for Calais are making it far easier for them to do so.
They are not making it far easier. They are providing humanitarian assistance to them.
Are phones people in humanitarian?
Well, they are in this day and age. They are in this day and age.
You might be right on this. You may very well be right. But it would be far better to hear this from a Care for Calais spokesperson than from you.
Right? I agree.
If all they are doing is providing sort of food and shelter for people who would otherwise be cold and starving, why have they not issued such a statement to GB News to absolutely clarify that? If they are issuing anything that might facilitate, even negligently, even if not as an intention, the ability to conduct illegal activity, why aren't they absolutely adamant and issued a press statement to GB News clarifying that they haven't?
Because also, for Keir Starmer and Labour Party, this smash the gangs thing, I mean, I think it's infinitely harder to smash the gangs, if you do have a ready supply of people on the other side of the channel who are happy to help make people's lives more comfortable when they are in these migrant camps, who are directing them towards the legal advice that they might need to seek as and when they illegally come to Britain, maybe give them the smartphones that, it could be argued, could be used to help contact and link up with human traffickers, etc., as well, if you take a cynical approach to the smartphone situation there, which I think is pretty reasonable given what we're seeing happening. If Keir Starmer wants to smash the gang, surely you should be having a little look at some of these groups. It's not just Care for Calais.
Don't you think maybe he is? Maybe he is.
No,
maybe they can provide information. How do we not? How do we not?
I think there's a serious amount of intelligence that could come from these charities, especially Care for Calais, with the gangs that they want to smash. 100%.
No, it does need to be looked at. But, Patrick, you were quite right to say there is a fine line here. I mean, imagine that you were working in, I don't know, a drugs rehabilitation charity. You're probably dealing with people who you are aware are in possession about their person of illegal drugs. You need to handle that extremely carefully. You don't want to be helping them find suppliers or enriching the mafia who are giving them drugs. But it is a fine line. And that's where I go again and say, I mean, I hope Keir Starmer is looking at it. If he is, he hasn't made any statement to that effect, nor has the government. But where there are fine lines, transparency and openness on exactly what you're doing and what you're not doing and what your protocols are, and answering questions from the media and the public needs to be done rapidly, quickly and honestly.
There's been reports in the past that charity workers are advising these asylum seekers or these illegal immigrants on what to say when they get here to beat the system, such as pretending to be gay. Now, a lot on the left say that doesn't happen. It has happened. Or pretending to be of another religion. There are so many ways to game our system, and it does happen. And you have to wonder who on that coastline is telling these people that.
And that's certainly not charitable activity.
No,
right?
exactly. But that's the point. So you know, Nina, I wonder why we don't have some kind of watchdog that is going to investigate this, because you would have it with anything else, wouldn't you? You'd have a look at the conduct of some, and that may find out there's no wrongdoing, and we hope that there will be no wrongdoing. I imagine that Care for Calais and other migrant groups, in the strongest possible terms, would say that there is no wrongdoing going on there. But if you had a similar situation to this in any other walk of life, you would have an investigation, surely.
I don't think an investigation is required. I mean, I think you need to keep an eye on things without going absolutely tonto on it. I think you need to watch what's happening, and you need to use these people, if you like, to get information, because they will have the information. They will have information there on the ground. They will know.
That presumably they wouldn't release.
Look, let's not downplay this situation. This is a national emergency. We are being invaded by the day by unknown foreign men. And as a family man, I can't say it enough. I want something done about it. I don't want them here. End of.
Can I ask you, Adam, in terms of migration, what level of migration would you like to see into this country?
I think it should be 1 in, 1 out.
And what kind of migrants would you like to see here?
Anyone that contributes, pays their taxes, respects the culture, respects the language, respects our laws, is welcome in.
How do you know that the people who are coming across on boats will not do that?
Because we've seen many crimes emanating from the asylum seeker hotels. Please don't deny that, because it is a fact.
I haven't denied anything. Yeah. I'm just saying how many.
I'll tell you what you're trying to paint to the viewer is that I have a problem with these asylum seekers because many of them are brown, and that is not the case. White-skinned people, say from Albania or Bulgaria, I would be just as worried of them coming to this country.
You know, it's extraordinary how you've put words into my mouth that I didn't say. I find it very interesting.
I know the angles that people on the left... I've sat on this settee and had many people try the same
You're making assumptions about me. You're making assumptions about... You are absolutely not entitled to do that. It's an arrogance on your part. It's an arrogance on your part to assume what I'm going to say and what I am not going to say, and I will not put up with that for you.
Look, the host is Patrick. Patrick puts up and if he doesn't like what I say, he will shut me down. He hasn't.
So I don't have an opinion on what's right for me and what's wrong for me.
We are veering slightly away from the topic now. I will just have the final word on whether or not there should be a bit more done on these, to have a look into some of these humanitarian groups.
Yeah, I think it should actually probably start with the Charity Commission. Their job is to make sure charities of all types are acting appropriately, not merely not doing criminal activity, but are acting within charity law. The first burden is on their shoulders. They should get on with it.
All right, OK. Well, thank you very much. Another lively start. Right, OK. Well, talking about giveaways, it is time for the Great British Giveaway now, and the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, £36,000, could be all yours. Just like having an extra £3 tax-free in your bank account every single month for an entire year. Here's all the details you'll need to make it yours.
On demand. Good luck.
OK, so coming up, I'll have the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. Oh, and Tory attack dog, Carol Vorderman, had a change of heart.
Well, yes, he should apologise. You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
Yeah, a little bit of buyer's remorse. I'll bring you that soon. But first, both Labour MPs, hoping to chair the Women and Equalities Committee, think trans women are women. So can Labour be trusted to protect women's rights? Former Tory Minister Andrea Jenkins certainly doesn't think so. She's live and she's next.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on the plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight Now. The two Labour MPs vying to become the chair of the Women and Equalities Committee both believe that trans women are women. The implication there being they don't know what a woman is. Kate Osborne and Sarah Owen have previously slammed campaign groups for promoting the importance of biological sex. And Osborne in particular has said some quite fruity things. She said last year that a woman can have a penis. She also said that her New Year's resolution was to block TERFs, OK? And do you remember this? In December last year, Osborne was embroiled in an almighty war of words with the then Women and Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch.
Also made these statements using inflammatory language that likens children and young people coming out as trans to the spread of a disease.
I've never said that. That is a lie.
Well,
that is a lie, and I think you should withdraw that statement. That is a lie. You are...
So if either one of those two end up leading one of the most influential committees in Parliament, can Labour really be trusted to protect women's rights? I'm joined now by the former Tory Minister, Andrea Jenkins. Andrea, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. So two Labour MPs who don't know what a woman is could be in charge of a very important women's-based committee. Your thoughts?
I mean, it's deeply concerning, Patrick. I mean, also, you've just shown some clips there, but Kate Osborne also said that excluding trans community from sport excludes them from society. And another concerning thing she said was about puberty blockers. It should not be banned. It should be a case-by-case basis. And I think any parent across the land is going to be very worried about that. Now, I saw that hot off the press, actually, that I believe that it's actually Sarah who's got it. She's just literally within minutes just tweeted.
Oh, good.
So they must have counted. So I think that's a blessing, although I'm not convinced that she's going to do much better. Are you, Patrick?
No, I mean, well, indeed. I mean, she's apparently been quite hot on the idea that trans women are women as well. Look, why does it matter? Why is it so important? You know, we do also have a Minister for Women and Equalities, don't we? We have the Equalities Act. We have all of these things. So, in the grand scheme of things, why does it actually matter that someone who sits on a committee about women and equalities thinks that trans women are women?
I mean, I think it's very reflective of the government. I mean, they're meant to hold the government to account. However, I just can't see it happening. I think this is going to be the direction of Labour. Bear in mind, it's meant to be cross-party who votes in the chairman, because Labour's got their stonking majority. So I think it shows the direction of where Labour MPs are at the moment. But back to your first part of your question, Patrick, I'd actually get rid of this committee. I'd actually get rid of the Minister for Women, because I think we should be a society and a country based on a meritocracy. Let's have policies right for everybody. So that's what I would like to see us do, not go further into this wokey area and also this positive discrimination. We only saw some cases recently in the police of positive discrimination, people being, white men being looked over. I bet they don't cover stuff like that.
Well, probably not, no. I suppose the argument might be that this woke nonsense did kind of originate under the Tories, or certainly was allowed to breathe for a bit until I think there was an attempt to try to claw it back, by which time, the genie's out of the bottle, isn't it? And then now you've got a Labour government and then this happens, right? So, do you think the Tories have to share a bit of the blame for this?
No, I agree. And if you actually look, because I'm quite passionate about this, Patrick, I actually looked. It was one particular schools minister who was the longest serving schools minister who back in 2010 was saying that he'd like to see more support for the trans community, spoke about more in schools, etc. And if you actually look when it went through the RSHE, it went through during COVID when most people was actually voting remotely. So it didn't have that same scrutiny. And I remember when I was first a candidate in 2013, we was getting lobbied then, 11 years ago by lots of different charities saying they didn't want genders to be on passports. So I think this has actually been a 10, 15-year campaign from the left.
Yeah, indeed. There are massively concerning aspects to this now. I don't think it can be overstated that if the Labour Party as a party and as a government now does seriously struggle to define what a woman is, how can they possibly therefore protect women's spaces? How can they possibly protect women's prisons? How can they protect women's sport? How can they protect, you know, girls in schools, for example? It strikes me that potentially we are now actually, whether we've accepted this in law or not, by virtue of having a Labour government now, a self-definition nation. Now, we appear to everything is pointing towards the idea that in Britain now, reinforced by government, you just are whatever you say you are now. And I think that is quite concerning.
I completely agree, and I do fear for children in schools at the moment under the next 5 years under a Labour government. What are they going to be taught? And I don't know if you saw this week, the UN has brought this report out, the United Nations, that we've got to ban phrases like man's best friend, etc. And it's just getting bonkers. This woke wagon has just gone to the extreme now, where we're just losing British phrases, and that's got to stop.
Well, indeed. Look, Andrea, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and always great to get your views. So I do hope to chat to you again very, very soon. It's former Tory Minister Andrea Jenkins. Well, coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages have landed, and my panel will be on standby with their expert analysis. Oh yes, and the person who was really, hammering the Tories like arguably nobody else, Carol Vorderman. Well, she might have finally seen the light.
Well, yes, he should apologise. You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
69 days that's taken. That's all it took. Anyway, all that and much, much more in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures are going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively and not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry, large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even again likely to see more of a frost on Friday morning. Much of the country, though, will be dry and fine on Friday. We will see rain coming into the northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. That's a sign of a change. Things turning wetter across the north into the weekend, staying dry in the south and slowly warming up.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now it's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. So here we go. I'm going to start us off with the Metro. One of Britain's worst miscarriages of justice. After 33 years, I'm innocent. This is a man with learning difficulties who was bullied and badgered into confessing to murder, has now been cleared 33 years later. He's called Oliver Campbell, and he's understandably over the moon. Let's go to the Independent. Starmer warned ailing NHS is in critical condition. A damning rapid review finds decade of Tory cuts and disastrous reforms has left health service with one of the worst cancer survival rates in the West. So there we go. Let's go to the Eye. NHS shake-up, biggest since 1948, Starmer promises the UK. Apparently weight loss drugs like Ozempic are likely to play a key role in the Prime Minister's plans. Starmer says that major changes are needed to transform the health system. Questions remain over how Labour will fund its pledge to reform the NHS. So, you know, we wait with bated breath, don't we? The Daily Telegraph, NHS does less despite record funding. So very much two different angles on the same story here. The NHS does less despite record funding, according to the Telegraph. The health service must reform or die, apparently. I think we might have a little chat about that in a minute. The Times, they've got a picture there of the cast of Swan Lake walking on water outside St James's Park. The story below that, though, is Labour orders biggest NHS reform in history. Right, so there we go. Now, we've got quite a lot to get through in this section. I will start us off on the story that is absolutely dominating the front pages, as you will have guessed. It is that NHS story. Mark, you know, so major reform, how are we going to pay for it? Is it underfunded?
It's not underfunded. If you were to look back 15 or 20 years ago, it would have been reasonable to say, if you measure what proportion of our money we spent on healthcare in Britain compared to similar countries, it was a little bit lower. We're now basically caught up with everybody apart from America that has the most ludicrously expensive healthcare.
Or Scandinavia or France.
No, we're caught up with them. As a proportion of GDP, we spend the same on healthcare as virtually every Western country. It's not funding. There have not been Tory cuts. The NHS has had more and more money thrown at it. So why is it failing so badly? And I really hope that Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer realise this is a systemic failing. Do you remember we used to say this was the envy of the world, the NHS? Why has nobody in Europe replicated the system then? Why don't we instead show a bit more humility, a bit less Little Englander, and learn from the Germans, the Swiss and the Dutch about why their healthcare system is so much better? And it's not money, it's the way the system works.
What would you do to sort it out, do you think?
Well, if I knew exactly what to do, I wouldn't be sitting on your sofa at this time of night on a Wednesday. Look, it's been absolutely trashed in the last Tory government. The fact of the matter is that the money has not been going to the right places. We've been understaffed. The staff have been underpaid. For some reason, the Tory government put a cap on the number of doctors that could be trained each year. I think was it 7,000 or was it 8,000? But anyway, not enough. For inexplicable reason. Inexplicable reason.
Do you think the solution is more money?
Could I just I'll put this to you, Adam, which is that apparently I'm hearing now that within these reports on the front pages, it does make reference to the idea that apparently in January, £40 million was spent on diversity jobs.
I've just wrote down that. We've got diversity managers, we've got middle managers that just manage for the sake of managing, we have waste, we have corruption. I know there's corruption because I know former suppliers to the NHS that had one tariff for the NHS and one for their normal clients. So we overpay. As Mark said, record amounts of money have been thrown at it. But there is a reason the last few years why the health service is failing as it is. It's because during COVID, we ridiculously become the COVID health service rather than the National Health Service. People's cancers weren't looked at. People weren't checked by doctors and nurses.
There were practical reasons for that at the time.
One second.
There were practical reasons.
One second. because there are many health services within Europe that haven't got the waiting list that we have now got, haven't got the problems that we have. We shut down the NHS, we allowed old people to die from other ailments rather than COVID, and there is no way we can catch up within the next year or two.
And it's permanently in crisis, the NHS. Permanently in crisis, has been for almost all my adult lifetime.
That it's been top-heavy for far too long.
So let's adopt the Dutch or the German system, something like that.
So the management has always been the problem. There are far too many Obergruppenführers and departments that you say that you don't need. But basically, it is underfunded for what it needs and understaffed.
OK, all right. Let's whiz ourselves onto a story that I think you might have missed. So Marks and Spencer's has teamed up with ITV to launch an X Factor-style fashion show with contestants competing for the chance to design a clothing collection for the brand. Well, hey, look, this sounds good, doesn't it? But the competition has raised eyebrows because one of the contestants is a sustainability-focused pattern cutter who uses his social media platform to promote trans rights, OK, but another contestant created a bottom-bearing latex bodysuit. Now, the average M&S customer is over the age of 55. So will this brand's obsession with, well, it says diversity there, I'm not entirely sure what that is, but anyway, scare off customers? I mean, yeah, Mark, do you ever wear bottomless leather chaps?
No, not yet, anyway.
No.
This is it is bizarre, this, and this is pretty typical, actually, of how the corporate world seems to be going woker and woker and is forgetting about its core customers. I mean, we had Bud Light, this disaster with their advertising campaign with a trans activist. Absolutely no problem with trans activists being involved in advertising, but their basic customer base was white, straight men. It just didn't appeal to them. Harley-Davidson motorcycles have gone woke now, again, appeal to that audience. And the thing is with certain products, look, diversity can go too far. Quite often products are aimed at a particular demographic, a particular section, a particular gender, a particular age group. And if you suddenly say, well, actually, as M&S, we want to start appealing to young gay men, for the sake of argument, you've got to completely change the brand. That's not its market position.
Do you honestly imagine that Marks and Spencer's are going to ask them to produce the garments that they've shown probably in their student college, where you do the most outrageous things? There are two misconceptions here. One is that over 55s are people who are in comfy trousers with elastic waistbands and wearing slippers, and that's it. And let me tell you, we are bloody well not. And the second thing is, all the great fashion designers have had varying parts, but the bulk of them, the men, are gay men. Now, nobody's ever complained about that. You can talk about your Valentino, you can talk about Christian Dior, you can talk about Yves Saint Laurent, and anything that's filtered down. And nobody said these gay people should not be creating frocks for women.
The brand.
So what?
I do want to clarify. I literally couldn't care less about the sexuality of anybody involved. No. What I am saying is the kind of products that maybe these individual designers have become known for are not the things that I would expect to see on the shelves.
But the lingerie thing. That could go straight into Rosie Whiteley-Huntley's knickers.
Well, I don't know what
I'd rather not talk about.
Steady on.
One thing I want to get across, and I think many people have now woke up to this, is that over the last few years we've had a trans agenda pushed upon us and our children throughout the world.
Yeah.
And the corporate world is facilitating that. They are pushing an ideology and an agenda which encourages kids to have surgery, encourages kids to use drugs to change gender. Now, that, in my view, is pretty evil, and I don't really want to see the corporate companies that I actually like Marks and Spencer's. I don't want to see them involved in it.
But I mean, the weird thing is this, isn't it? I don't know. I don't shop at Marks and Spencer's, but if you were on the Marks and Spencer's,
not even underpants.
No, not even my underpants. If you were on the Marks and Spencer's board and you were sort of asked, what's your basic brand proposition to the market? I guess you'd say something like conservative, small C, middle of the road, reliable. That's what we're famous for. That's what we provide.
That's where you've got it wrong.
If you start diverting from that, you start alienating your customer, and company after company after company is doing this to their own detriment.
You say that because you don't go into Marks and Spencer, so you don't know.
I do. I know what it is as a brand. There's plenty of brands I know what they are.
The thing is,
and
Marks and Spencer's had years in the wilderness where the fashion was really, really awful. They went either too young and too old, and they've done really well last year and this year. They've done fantastic, and so has John Lewis, by the way. The new John Lewis season is fantastic.
Conservative, reliable
Let's
brands.
just remember, the trans community are about 0.5% of this population.
So why are you so hysterical about it?
Because it's in our faces everywhere we look. It's in our schools. It's in the corporate world. Yes, it is.
Well, we're gonna whiz ourselves on to another story today. So Carol Vorderman, all right, who campaigned for years, really, I think, to get Starmer into number 10. But it looks like she might be regretting that decision now.
To go from 12 million to less than 2 million pensioners receiving it is just way too low. And I'm shocked by it because they could raise that money in so many other ways. Well, I think he should apologise.
You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
A little bit of buyer's remorse there, I think, from Carol Vorderman.
It's unbelievable. I can remember her from being the brilliant mathematician on Countdown, you know, where in 30 seconds she could get 6 numbers, divide this by this to get to any 3-digit number. Turns out how she was a good mathematician, I don't know, because she believes in the magic money tree.
Well,
I don't know how
she's a brilliant mathematician, and she's done a lot for children in this country with her maths.
Well, she may be a kind and intelligent, but she doesn't seem to understand macroeconomics because the overall fiscal position of the country seems to have suddenly caught her by surprise.
I think where Carol calls out where she sees injustice, and I think she sees injustice there.
And she isn't pushing back like she did against the Tories. Yeah. And where is led by donkeys? Where are the projections on the buildings? You know, where are the vans with all the screens with this?
Well, they're going to come up with
this. They're going
to have to, because otherwise they'll be completely pointless and redundant. So I do think one saving grace is a matter of time, presumably, before we do see something illuminated on Keir Starmer's house or something like that from led by donkeys. So anyway, coming up, I'll have the very rest of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And is this actually true?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you some bizarre stuff next. Just stay tuned.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
I'm now joined by a truly inspirational man. He's an endurance runner, Ben Smith. 401 marathons in just 401 days for mental health and well-being. He was spurned on after being bullied as a child, was able to raise a whopping £250,000. I'm pleased to say that he joins me now. Right, so this was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
How long ago was it?
Well, we're coming up to, I think, next year, roughly about 10 years since we started it. In 2026 will be 10 years since we finished.
So when did you run the marathons?
So it was between 2015 and 2016, over the course of 401 days, all around the UK.
What kind of madness was that?
Oh, it was an adventure, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, on day one when we started in Bristol, never ever thought that the project would ever become what it became. But over the course of the 401 days, we ran with 13,500 people within 8 miles of everywhere on the British mainland, from Land's End to John O'Groats. So,
and that was the journey from Land's End to John O'Groats?
Yeah. We covered so many different communities around the UK because I suppose the reason why I was doing it was to raise so much money for 2 anti-bullying charities that we wanted to include people in that. And, yeah, I got to run in some amazing places.
I bet you did. What would you say is a beautiful place? I mean, the whole country, I love this country, but there are some outstanding, beautiful areas around. What would you say?
Oh, definitely.
Where's the best place that you run?
Well, I think I've got a few, but I think I would say probably the Highlands of Scotland.
I knew you would say someone like that.
Yeah, just the kind of vastness of it, the dramaticness of it. I remember running up and down one of the paths in the Highlands near Glencoe and coming face to face with a wild stag. So it was quite scary.
What did it do?
It did nothing. It did absolutely nothing. It was quite used to people because of the path.
What are you doing here? This is my house.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Right, I've got a couple more front pages for you, so let's do it. All right, so we've got The Guardian, yes. Thousands dying due to NHS delays. This is according to an inquiry. The NHS is dominating basically all of the front pages for you tomorrow. Trump in damage control mode after the Harris debate, they also say. Let's whiz ourselves over to the Mail. Yeah, same story. NHS must reform or die, says the Prime Minister. This major report warns health service in a critical condition. No, this is, I imagine, going to be dominating a lot of the shows tomorrow, isn't it, here at GB News, where we're going to be talking about, you know, what reform means, what does it mean, more tax, etc., etc. So there we go. Those are your front pages. We've discussed really the only story on this, so I'm going to whiz us on to something else. Now, many of you might have watched the debate last night between Trump and Harris. Many of you might have seen the highlights of it. But it's fair to say that this quite bizarre moment from the presidential debate has, well, broken the internet.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Right, now, at first glance, that sounds a bit nuts, OK? And those comments inspired an onslaught of fact-checking articles which initially were ridiculing Trump. However, I regret to inform you that there is a grain of truth into what former President Donald Trump was saying there. I'm just going to play this clip to you now.
They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them like...
Yeah, so that was a bloke in America there, in Ohio, which has seen a huge influx of specifically Haitian immigration. And he was making that point. That was him there saying, what are you going to do about it? There are other people who've gone on record as well. There is also a clip doing the rounds, but apparently that is of an American citizen in Ohio who ate her neighbour's cat on the driveway. So, you know, there is some stuff like that happening.
Fruit Loop stuff, it really is. I mean, the thing is, supposing one person had eaten a cat, as you say, Trump goes on and extrapolates from that there's a kind of huge rash of this happening. There's an epidemic of it.
But what about the headless ducks, Nina? I mean,
yes,
that's
the thing is, a duck. If you were homeless, homeless and hungry, and there was a duck over there,
I don't know.
Do you mean the duck or the cat? The duck.
God, for heaven's sake! Look, I mean,
I'll
people
go and
eat
wait
ducks.
outside McDonald's and ask someone to buy me a burger rather than kill a duck.
I mean, I get what you mean. I mean, it was the way he said it, but I mean, conceivably, there is an issue in Ohio with that kind of stuff.
I think
there is not an issue. He's an idiot.
There's behaviour in Haiti that goes on that maybe might be imported into America.
You're clutching at
straws. Of all of that, if I'm not at my erudite best this evening, Patrick, it's because I did stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning to watch this debate. I rather agreed with the journalists who said Trump was insane and Harris was insufferable. America has a lot of problems. Cat eating is probably not amongst them.
No, fair enough. Well, I think we can all agree that's quite enough of cat. That. Anyway, it's time for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. So, Mark, let's have your Greatest Britain, please.
My Greatest Britain honoree is James Earl Jones, just passed away, aged 93.
Brilliant.
The voice of the greatest villain of all time, Darth Vader, who, like me, also suffers from fairly bad asthma. But I mean, he didn't play the character, it was just the voice. But he was really, therefore, behind one of the greatest villains cinema.
Brilliant theatre actor as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant theatre actor as well. He won all these awards, and we only know about Darth Vader, but there's more to him than that. Much more to that.
My nomination is Nigel Farage for standing up in Parliament and actually representing people like me and millions of others in this country. Today he spoke about two-tier policing, which is a big thing.
Yeah, Nina?
Mine is film director William Waugh, with 2 R's, who produced the Princess of Wales video, which extraordinary kind of Hollywood-style thing, which kind of broke the mould on royal footage, actually. You've never seen royals this intimate before.
No, it was a completely unique video. Much to Nina's disdain, I have gone for Nigel Farage as today's Greatest Britain. However, who's your Union Jackass?
Lambeth Council, who have announced there are going to be some primary school closures in Lambeth. What do you think one of the key reasons behind those closures is? Brexit. God spare me and live in a country where anything that goes wrong is because of a referendum decision we made 8 years ago and have surely to God moved on from.
I refuse to believe that the reason why primary schools are shutting in Brexit.
It's not.
Because one thing we don't have is a population shortage.
Yeah.
And I don't get that. But anyway, right. I've got to say now, we went to Lambeth Council for a response. They didn't give us one. So, great. Adam.
My nomination is Keir Starmer for overseeing 60 days of utter carnage in this country. And he keeps lying about the 22 billion surprise
Not
black...
a lie.
Yes, it is, black hole.
What about the OBR?
It's my nomination, Nina, thank you. The lie about the 22 billion black hole in this country. Has he become the most hated man in Britain right now? Oof. I think he has.
Oh, OK. All right, Nina.
Mine is a sculptor called Anto Brennan, who is the Belfast artist who produced the Queen's statue, the one with her and the Duke of Edinburgh and the Corgis, which was unveiled, which is absolutely atrocious.
It's the one who doesn't look anything like her.
It doesn't look anything like her.
It looks like she's got a beard.
Yeah.
Could be trans.
It's seriously not good.
It's not good. It's not good. OK, well, they would have all been worthy winners. I've gone for Lambeth Council, mainly because I did feel that sculptor has had an absolute kicking all day, and I thought the last thing he's going to want to see just before he goes to bed is me give him one more little kick to that.
Very
so there we go.
sorry.
But look, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight's show, and I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Headliners are up next, as ever, of course. They're going to have a much more in-depth look at all of your newspaper front pages and what's inside them. But yes, I look forward, very much so, seeing you tomorrow at 9. Thank you, everybody who's watched and listened, and thank you, panel, as well.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures are going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively and not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry, large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even, again, likely to see more of a frost.
There's an incredible... Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Luis Elizondo says that he worked at the Pentagon and that he knows that they have recovered material that is not from this Earth. He resigned after believing his government wasn't taking the threat of UFOs seriously. So have they been covering up alien material from us?
I don't think the claims that are being made in Luis Elizondo's book, Imminent, are new. But I think what we have to pay attention to is the seniority of, one, Luis Elizondo, and two, the people who recruited him, and indeed the people he worked for, which was the Department of Defense and the Pentagon.
You think that he was in a position to know about this?
Yeah, he would have been. He would have been speaking to the individuals who were taking part in these investigations. You're showing some of those clips just now that potential incursions by objects controlled by a non-human intelligence, potentially. We're not saying alien necessarily, but something non-human.
Seems a bit far-fetched to me, Andrew. I'm a sceptic.
When people say sceptical, I think as a species, we're relatively new in terms of what we do in space. But right now, we've got a robot on Mars that drives about and has a little helicopter drone that every so often comes up, flies about away 10 feet from it to collect samples and comes back. Now, a species a couple of hundred years down the line from us would have far better technology than that. So who's to say what we're encountering aren't just really advanced probes from something else that's just slightly ahead of us in the technological scale? I don't think that's too far stretch of the imagination.
When you do see things like what we just saw there, which was made public, the New York Times did a big expose on all of this, and actually, you know, the world didn't end. We weren't all outside fighting each other for scraps of food and burning down the nearest Lidl, were we? We just thought, oh, that's quite cool.
I think now we have to look at it and maybe take a step back, look at the people coming out now, talking about UFOs and thinking, is there something to this that we've maybe been overlooking?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 11 o'clock. The Prime Minister will say the NHS must reform or die as a major report is published. The investigation by former Health Minister Lord Darzi warns that the NHS is in a critical condition with surging waiting lists, poor cancer performance and a struggle to access care. In a speech, Sir Keir Starmer will set out his plans for tackling the long waiting lists, improving the nation's health and shifting the focus towards community services. Rachel Reeves has defended claiming taxpayer-funded expenses for heating her second home after the government's plans to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners cleared the Commons. In today's exchanges at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall. Meanwhile, this morning, our political editor, Chris Hope, asked the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, if the looming October budget will be more bad news for pensioners.
We've committed to those bus passes, to free TV licences for those entitled and free prescriptions. But we've also committed to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. That means that pensioners have £900 more this winter and likely another £460 from next April.
In other news, a mother who went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in riots has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims. Her 12-year-old